Louis C.K. and Aziz Ansari have an opportunity for redemption. They're squandering it. Is that what's happening? They say their post-Me Too comedy is a loss for us all. Post-Me Too? This is this is from Vox. It should be unsurprising, but I had to talk about it. Listen, when it comes to Louis C.K., we can have a debate over whether or not what he did was appropriate. In my opinion, inappropriate. Although in most instances, apparently, okay, if you don't know what he did, apparently he asked women if he could, wank it in front of them. Many people said that's inappropriate. And there's a few, and I agree to a certain extent. Look, for the most part, is it misconduct? I don't know if I would call it misconduct. He asked to do it. But there's an issue of young comics and people in the industry wanting to meet up with him for professional reasons, and then him wanting to wank it in front of him. That wasn't every circumstance, but it was in some. That's why I'm saying it's not completely inappropriate. Listen, if Louis C.K. invites a woman over and he says, "You mind if, I do this?" Well, there you go. That's what adults do. Is it kind of weird? Sure. There are some reports, though, that apparently he was on the phone with someone, like a business meeting, and then she could hear him, going at it. And that's inappropriate, okay? So Louis C.K. doesn't get a free pass on this one. Is it like Kevin Spacey or like Weinstein? No, it's not. But what he did was still... But what did Aziz Ansari do? He had a bad date? Seriously. Aziz Ansari is accused of having a bad date, basically. So what are they calling a post-Me Too comedy for? Aziz didn't do anything. But you still went after him, and you still tried to damage his career. And I'll tell you what, Aziz was probably one of the biggest mistakes they made. Louis C.K., here's what I say. I got into an argument with someone. It's really annoying, okay? What Louis C.K. did, in my opinion, inappropriate. Not all of it, but some of it. Okay, so here's what you do. Louis C.K. apologizes. Now you have an opportunity. Louis C.K. has always been really offensive. So what happens? You say, Louis, here's what we're going to do. I'm sorry, it's Louis. Everybody got mad at me because I'm calling him Louis. It's Louis C.K. Okay, Louis, I'll tell you what. You come do the show, open with an apology, make it fun and funny, and then lighten your routine. A little less offensive. He would have said, okay. Instead, what did they do? They said, GTFO, we're not going to let you come back. They complained when he tried doing underground comedy shows. What is he supposed to do? He's a comedian. That's what he does for a living. He's got to go. He's got to work. He's got to eat, right? So what happens is they reject him. So then he comes back and says, you know what? I've lost everything. Screw it. I'm just going to go for it. And now he's more offensive. And now they're angry that he's more offensive. Well, you reap what you sow. You had an opportunity to say, Louis, we accept your apology. Now here's what we want to see. And he would have done it. It's similar to what happened with Sargon. Sargon uses these words on a live stream, offensive words, some racial slurs, in a context that was meant to insult some alt-right types. That's what Sargon said. Okay. What could Patreon have done? Hey, don't do it again. Don't use these words. Sargon said, great, congratulations. You had leverage over these people. You could have changed their behavior. Instead, you kicked them in the butt, and well, Sargon hasn't doubled down, but Louis has. Aziz Ansari, however, didn't do anything wrong. So let's read the story. Louis C.K. said that he said, God, he loves being white. I'm not going to quote that, so I won't take that. Here's how great it is to be, the comedian went on. I could get in a time machine and go to any time, and it would be effing awesome when I get there. That is exclusively a white privilege. It's funny, but it's wrong, okay? If you went back in time to, Asia, you'd probably still be killed. You'd probably still be killed going to Africa, and it's really funny that he thinks that. Now, he could go back in time to his countries, and he'll be okay, but no, that's not correct. The bit, part of his 2008 special, Chewed Up, was emblematic of CK's approach, poking fun at the inequalities of American society while simultaneously acknowledging the ways they benefited him. Except, CK would regularly use racial slurs and other slurs that are not allowed. Contrast that with a set he performed in December 2018, a little over a year after he admitted to wanking it in front of women without their consent. I don't believe... I'll say this. They're highlighting the worst aspects of what he did, but that's fair. Look, man, a lot of people want to defend Louis C.K., but come on, man. There were some stories where these women were like, dude, what are you doing? And he was like, hold on, let me do this. And it's like, but some of it, during the December appearance, apparently at a comedy club on Long Island, C.K. joked that Asian men are all women and poked fun at school shooting survivors and gender nonconforming teenagers, according to BuzzFeed News. They tell you to call them them. They tell you what to call them. He complained of teens who use the pronouns they, them. Oh, okay. You should address me as there because I identify as a location and the location is your mother's. But here's the thing. I think it's funny that they try to use teens who do this because this is not an exclusively a teen thing. I actually think it's people who are in their 20s for the most part. It's a millennial thing. But there are teens who are doing it for sure. 2018, during which his stand-up special during which his stand-up special and the wide release of his film I Love You Daddy were canceled, seems to have wrought a change in CK. Where once his comedy offered a fresh look at established power structures, like when he did a bit on Saturday Night Live talking about how racist he was. Yes, talking about inequality, sure. And there's also a bit that people complained about in 2012 where he went on and used the N-word and said that he does. And Chris Rock laughed at it. Everyone's mad about that. I think it's really, really funny. I think it's really funny that you're trying to go back and pretend that Louis C.K. was somehow this great bastion of like diversity and social justice, when they're also going back to a bit in 2012 and complaining that he was using the N-word. So which one is it? It's like they have selective memory. I'll tell you what, Louis has always been offensive. That's his bit. When he went on Saturday Night Live in 2012, his whole bit was that he was a racist. I'm not exaggerating. He said he has a mild racism. And he went to talk about how when he encounters certain people of certain races, it gives him pause, and then he questions himself. So he's not saying he's an overt racist like a white supremacist, but he was literally saying he had mild racism. Are you at all surprised then? Okay? If that's his attitude, admitting he feels this way, that apparently he's being offensive today, I think it's all fake news. But I'm not so concerned about Louis. I want to talk about Aziz Ansari, who literally did nothing. The guy did nothing. He had a bad date. He had a bad date, and a woman said the date was bad and I didn't like it, and he's like, I'm sorry about that. They still came after him. Fellow comedian Aziz Ansari has followed a similar trajectory. Are you nuts? He didn't do anything near what Louis C.K. did. He once decried sexual harassment in his act and addressed the issue in a nuanced way on his show Master of None. But in 2017, a woman told the website Babe.net that he had pressured her for sex. Yes, according to the story, it sounds like they had a bad date. Not that it was, it was completely consensual. Ansari said he believed everything that happened between them was completely consensual and that he was surprised and concerned by her account. Her account wasn't even like a direct accusation that he had committed a crime or actually did anything wrong, other than it was just a bad date. So what happens? Okay, I'll tell you what. You reap what you sow. You come after someone like Aziz Ansari for having a bad date, and he's going to get angry. And then he hears all the people on Twitter just ragging on him nonstop, demanding more from him when he didn't do anything. What's he going to do? He's going to double down. He's going to, or not, you know what? I'm sorry. It's not even doubling down. Aziz didn't do anything in the first place. You've effectively just created an enemy. And this is how it goes. After the incident, his comedy took a different tone. In a fall 2018 appearance, he made fun of online debates about cultural appropriation and complained that nowadays everyone weighs in on everything. And that wasn't even that bad. The bit they're talking about is a New Yorker piece where he rags on the extreme wokeness. It wasn't even near Louis C.K. This is just manufactured outrage. They want to be mad. Give them anything to be mad about. And they'll accuse, the other side, the anti-identitarians, of being of the same thing. And sure, that's fair. I get it. But you know what? It's almost like, I'll take exception. If I'm going to criticize you for being upset over Canadians, you can't accuse me of being mad for the sake of being mad. No, I'm mad that you're falsely outraged and creating your own problems. The bigotry in CK said is disturbing, especially coming from someone who seemed at one time to have a relatively clear understanding of how power works in America. Like in 2012 when he sat around joking about how he can use the N-word and he doesn't care because he's trying to be offensive and provocative, or literally go on Saturday Night Live talking about how racist he was. This is fake news, okay? Straight up fake news. They say Louis C.K. used to talk about violence against women. Now he makes fun of genderqueer teens. Before Me Too, Louis was beloved by many for his often self-lacerating comedy. In his stand-up and on the autobiographical FX show Louis, he portrayed himself as a sad sack weirdo disturbed by his own sexual urges. He once called himself a prisoner of sexual perversion. Is it any surprise then that he wanked in front of a bunch of women? So CK did have some what you would consider to be woke segments. In one segment, he said, "How do women still go out with guys when you consider that there is no greater threat to women than men?" He asked in a 2013 special. Where the number one threat to women, globally and historically, were the number one cause of injury and mayhem to women. It's hyperbolic, but actually I don't think that's untrue. Men are overwhelmingly commit acts of violence, like the majority of it, but are also the majority of victims of violence. But it's funny. It's funny. He's making a joke. I get it. Ha ha ha. I'm not offended by it. He can make that joke, and we can move on, right? But CK was also subject of long simmering misconduct rumors. And here's another thing I'm going to have to criticize them for. They talked about that already. Can we move on? What's your conclusion? Aziz Ansari once included a sexual harassment storyline in his show. Now he's complaining about Twitter outrage. Yes, because you guys keep coming at them and insulting them and dragging them when they didn't do anything. They end by saying, ever since the Me Too movement gained mainstream attention in 2017, there's been a lot of talk about what accused men can do to redeem themselves. Now, more than a year in, it's certainly possible to imagine some of the accused truly reckoning with their pasts. Dan Harmon's apology for sexually harassing a writer on his show offers a view of what that might look like. But it's hard to hold out much hope for such a reckoning on a large scale when two men who seemed like they of all people might be able to look deeply at their own behavior have instead chosen to pander to those who would excuse them. Because there is no excuse. You don't excuse anybody. They've said it perfectly. If you will not give them a chance at redemption to work and to live, why bother with you? I'm not going to try and go do a show with these people. Why? Because you bend the knee once, they want it again. Kevin Hart's apologized 3 times. Yeah, okay. Anyway, I'm done. Thanks for hanging out. I'm going to get out of here. I'll see you guys tomorrow on the main channel at 4.